Hey, we're on air. It is Thursday, December 28th, and this is a meeting to check in on outreach tasks for Backdrop CMS. Today we have some exciting news. But before we get to that, I did want to mention in this meeting that as far as the website updates go, we do have a new drop-down menu in place, and we have new footer designs. So if you haven't seen those yet, definitely take a look at the main website. We're still working on redoing the homepage. I was hoping to have some of those changes up in sync with our release of Backdrop 1.9. So between January 1st and January 15th, we can change our focus to work on that if we want, but between now and the first, we need to try and get as much done for 1.9 as possible. That's kind of updates for the website. Newsletter-wise, though, we did just send a newsletter earlier this week, which most of you might have seen. It was specifically introducing the Backdrop Forum, which is something that I guess has been open for about a month, but we were kind of alpha testing it in quiet before we announced it to the world. It's now open for everybody to use. The design is pretty good. We've gotten a whole bunch of new people participating, which is really great. We've got some questions already marked as frequently asked. And I'm happy to see people participating in the forum who weren't previously participating in the issue queue, which is really great. I think it's a good tool for people who maybe don't have GitHub accounts and aren't developers to be able to get in there and ask questions and talk to others about Backdrop. So I'm very excited to see that forum moving forward. Thanks to Doc Wilmot for all of the work he's done on that. Also, in the last newsletter we sent out was a survey to anyone who's on the newsletter to try and figure out who they are, what they're doing with Backdrop, and if they have adopted or are considering adopting, and if not, why. So the first question was, what CMSs have they used before? And we're about, the first question was, what do people do with a CMS? And we're mostly backend developers and site owners with a minority of front-end developers. But those numbers aren't nearly as skewed as I was expecting. I was expecting most of the people who are following along with Backdrop to be backend developers, but we're actually 42% people who own or manage a website that uses a CMS, and only 36% of people who are backend developers. So we've got more people on our mailing list anyway who are responsible for managing a site than we do for people who are making sites, which is interesting in terms of hitting our target audience, which I think is great. 90% of those people have experience with Drupal, and only 10 of them have experience with WordPress. Actually, it's closer to 6 with experience in WordPress. So I think that's kind of what we expected, but I'm also glad to see that some of the people who are looking at Backdrop are coming to us from WordPress, and not everybody's coming from Drupal, so that's good. And the majority of people, at least on our mailing list, are English speakers, though we do have about 10% who speak Spanish and French, and 5% who speak German. So it's good that we do have some people on there who are multilingual, but since our newsletters are sent in English, it's not surprising that most of them are English speakers as well. Most people are using, on the newsletter right now, are using or trying out Backdrop right now, which is great. We've got 42% of people who have already used it. 30% of people have tried it in the last 6 months, 5% of people have tried it in the past year, and 15 people haven't tried it at all but are still interested. Asking those people if they're planning on launching a Backdrop site, the majority of people responded that they already have launched a Backdrop site, which is great. That's 31%. We've got a bunch of people working, 20% of people working on one right now, 5% of people are planning on launching one in the next 6 months, 15% in the next year, and 26% don't have any plans to launch one yet. We also asked the question, and this is the one I think it's going to be most valuable to us. If you have a site you're thinking about moving to Backdrop, are any of the following preventing you from doing so right away? And we had, let me see if I can get these in order. 50% of people responded that they are waiting for more modules, themes, and layouts to become available. So I think that's kind of the number one blocker, is that there's so much available for Drupal, and we're not quite there yet with Backdrop, that people are still waiting for those features to exist in both places. And then the next highest result is 31% said there's nothing preventing them from moving to Backdrop, which is great. So I think a lot of people are waiting for specific projects, and everyone else, well, a bunch of other people feel like they don't need to wait, which is good. After that, we have 25% of people who felt like they wanted to see more sites running on Backdrop. So I think having our showcase up and getting more content in that is going to be really helpful. And same thing, the same 25% of people, or another 25% of people, said they wanted to hear more success stories about people who have already adopted Backdrop. So I think making sure our case studies have detailed information about what worked and what didn't, why they chose Backdrop for that project might be really useful too. 25% of people said they were waiting for the right project to come along, so they're interested in using Backdrop but just don't have a project for it yet, which is good. 18% of people said they wanted to see big brand names adopting Backdrop. 12% of people said they want more people they know and trust adopting Backdrop, and only 6% of people said they weren't sure of the differences between Drupal and Backdrop. So I think that's pretty telling that we're doing a fairly good job of explaining to people what Backdrop is, why it exists, but that we just need more people to adopt it, more modules and themes and layouts to be created, or at least more PR around the people who are adopting it. And if we get more people will come. So again, kind of chicken and egg scenario there. But I think that's pretty useful for us in terms of what we need to focus on to make Backdrop more successful. We also had a last open-ended question that said, do you have any other comments, questions, or concerns? And it sounds like a lot of people just added really positive comments saying Backdrop is in the right place at the right time. Thank you very much for the Drupal fork. Just kind of good little messages of support. But there are a couple of comments, several people kind of hit on the same thing here, saying that they need better user experience or improved display for how to select modules, themes, and layouts. And I think this is for both on backdropcms.org and in the module browser. There's a lot of commentary here about how hard it was in Drupal to choose a module. It was referred to as an art form that relies on reviewing module adoption, the issue queue, and maintainer responsiveness. There's also a lot of comments about how themes need to have screenshots, which is something we know. Someone also recommended it would be nice if they had a demonstration video or a demonstration site. That's something that Theme Forest does really well. Every theme has a demo site, so you can click around and see all of the options. The inability of being able to find modules makes the experience of keeping up to Backdrop slow. And there's a couple of recommendations here on what we can do to make that experience better that include arranging modules into categories, which is something that we have an issue for and we're thinking about working on. Displaying less of the intro text and more data about the module on the search page so that we can see more results per page. Also sounds like it might be better, at least for experienced users. And there's a bunch of other good little bits in there, but it does seem like all the people who are offering feedback as to what we should do to help is around the ability to find and select modules, as well as the ability to tell what's available and what's not. So I think we've got some excellent feedback in there. We don't have a lot of participants in the survey yet. So far, there's only been 19 people, which I think is pretty good considering it went out in a newsletter only this week. But I would love to get some more answers to these questions, especially the last one about what people think we should be working on. And so I was going to propose that we post a link to the survey in our news section on the website and start tweeting about it too, so that if we can kind of drive some more traffic there and get some more people to contribute, even if they're not on our mailing list, I think that'll help us as well, because not everybody who's interested in adopting Backdrop has signed up for the mailing list, and if we can kind of get some more attention in the survey, I think we might get some more clear numbers in terms of where we should focus things. So I think it's really great to have the information we have, because it'll help us know the demographic of our mailing list specifically, but being able to say, okay, when we extended this to the larger community, we got more information And maybe that's not who's on our mailing list anymore, but it's something that I think is still going to be valuable in helping us determine what to do next. All right, so that is the newsletter. For January, we were planning on sending a newsletter that was going to introduce the Software Freedom Conservancy as our fiscal sponsor, hopefully with a link where we can ask people to contribute monetarily to the Backdrop project. That will, of course, go along with a blog post, I think, from Nate announcing PMC and role changes there. But we can't do that until we can get everybody's copy of the signed agreement back to the lawyer. So we're currently working on that right now. And then for early February, we wanted to send out another newsletter about Backdrop 1.9, which should be out mid-January. So if we don't end up with our Conservancy newsletter to go out in January, we should maybe come up with something else to send information to tell people about. And I was thinking, depending on our availability, we might want to announce some of the new features we're going to be putting onto the new homepage if we have them ready for the website. So I don't know how far we're going to get on either of those things. It might be good to have a third plan about things we might want to send out in the newsletter in case we don't get Conservancy done and in case we don't have anything exciting on the website to announce to people. Just finding something else that happened maybe over the course of this month, maybe an update on contributed modules, since that's something people are interested in knowing about. One of the recommendations we had in the newsletter was a weekly newsletter that could go out that would just say what modules, themes, and layouts were added in a given week, sort of like we do in our Hangout. That might be good, just kind of 2017 year in review style, where we could say these are all of the contributed modules we got in 2017. This is what we're looking in terms of, top 50 Drupal modules. Just kind of a contrib update might be a good topic, just because that's something that people who are already on the newsletter seem to be interested in. Do you have any thoughts on that, Nate?
Sorry, no.
Okay, so next up, blog posts. Nate, can you mute again? I'm getting a weird echo. Thanks. Okay, so for blog posts, we just it's a blog post about the forum. I was recommending we add one next about the survey. Then, of course, there'll be one about the Conservancy and one about Backdrop 1.9. We have other community spotlights coming, so if anyone has anything they want to offer for that, we have an issue in the Backdrop CMS.org queue. It's number 165. And if anyone has any other ideas for interesting posts that should go into the news section of backdropcms.org, you're of course always welcome to create one yourself on backdropcms.org. We do review unpublished content at least once a week, and if there's a great blog post there, we'll just schedule it. We have some guidelines for how to write a blog post in terms of using sentence case for headings and things like that. So if you're interested in writing a blog post for our site, you can do that as well. We also have an ongoing issue here for creating videos about the coolest parts of Backdrop. There aren't any on our to-do list, but if anyone is working on anything and they come across something they think is particularly cool, if you could make a 5-minute or less video and say, I love this feature, if you want to tweet it and use hashtag BackdropCMS or @mention BackdropCMS, we would love to get some more just kind of highlights of cool stuff Backdrop does out there so people can see it in action. We are also planning on getting a notice into Backdrop PHP Weekly for Backdrop 1.9, which should come out around January 15th. So the next weekly newsletter, we'll try and get that updated this time. We missed it last time because we didn't have a bug fix release. So I think we're going to do the same thing this year where if there's no bug fix release, we're just going to have them mention the 1.9.0 instead of 1.9.1. We have a couple of upcoming events for 2018. If you're interested in seeing events that you might be able to attend where you can speak about Backdrop or hear about Backdrop, you can go to backdropcms.org/news/events. And there haven't been any events recently. Obviously, it's middle of holiday season here to recap on, but there are new ones coming up in 2018, which include Drupal Camp Florida, February 15th through 18th, MidCamp in Chicago, March 8th through March 11th, Nerd Summit in Massachusetts, March 17th through March 18th, and Sand Camp or San Diego Drupal Camp, March 22nd and March 24th. So it's, most of these camps don't have schedules up yet. There's not necessarily official Backdrop things happening at them yet, but these are all camps that are open to hearing about Backdrop. So if you're going to be attending one, you can submit a session on Backdrop or have been Backdrop supporters in the past. We usually do a full day Backdrop training at Sand Camp. It's obviously not on the schedule now, but we are interested in still doing that. So hopefully, if you're interested in Backdrop training and you live in the San Diego area, that one is a safe one to add to your calendar. All right, so if anyone is interested in what our content strategy is for outreach in Backdrop, we do have a map. It's in issue 349 in the backdropcms.org queue. It talks about the kinds of content that we want to get out to our users, the mediums in which they can be delivered, whether it's Twitter or blog post or video or newsletter. And we always need help on the content creation side. We're apparently, developers are apparently very good at developing code and not very good at developing content. So if anyone who is part of the Backdrop community feels like maybe they're not so solid in this code developing area, but have skills in the content developing area, we definitely can use your help. And we would love assistance in any of those areas. So if you want to see the kind of information we're looking for, check out issue number 349 in the GitHub Backdrop Ops group, backdropcms.org queue, and we will definitely take up any offers we can get. So that's all I have for an update on community outreach this week. Nate, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I don't think so. Thanks for covering everything.
Okay, great. Well, then let's go ahead and wrap this meeting, and we will meet again in half an hour to talk about Backdrop CMS and Backdrop development tasks for the last 2 weeks. So thanks for attending, and thanks everybody for watching right now, and thanks everyone who's going to watch in the future. And we will see you in the GitHub issue queue, in the Gitter chat, on Twitter, or wherever else it is you keep up with your Backdrop news.
Bye. Bye.